Hello and welcome, my name is Piéra and today I'm here with my August wrap up. So some months no books are read and nothing occurs, and other months you read lots of books and lots of things occur. And this is one of those. So first things first, we're obviously not in Sydney anymore. If you haven't been keeping up on our social media, surprise, surprise, we moved home. We're currently living in his mum's house for the moment while we save a bit of money to get our own place because moving is hard and expensive. For those of you who aren't aware, and even for those of you who are, about 4 months ago I was offered a job down at a little wildlife park down in Sydney. So we packed up the cats and the snake and we moved to Sydney. It wasn't great, like in general. We didn't live in the best neighborhood. The house was kind of average. We didn't have any of our friends there. We didn't have much money. Kind of literally all we had there was the job, which was, you know, it was good at the time. A few months went past and then the job became something different. The company decided to change, I guess, the role that I was hired for to something that I wasn't really interested in doing. So I left. We spent the next 2 weeks trying to figure out what was going to happen next. We were planning to come home regardless, just depended on if we were going to move straight into a new place and be shit poor or go back to one of our parents' houses for a bit of time, regroup, regather. Obviously we chose the regroup, regather at his mum's house, as I said, because my parents also moved house and they moved into a house that wasn't pet friendly, and obviously we have a small zoo, so we moved into Jacob's mum's house. So at the moment, Jacob, myself, Aries and Artemis all currently live in this one bedroom just because we obviously also have a dog. This is Bailey, if you have not already met Bailey off my Instagram. And Jacob's sister also has a cat and she's currently just like playing over there on the other stuff at the moment. But we didn't know how they'd all get along. So it's actually gotten a lot better than I thought it would. And we'll also be getting Trick, my bird, on Saturday. So that's super exciting. It's gonna be super full in this bedroom. So we're home, which is good. Happy to be home, happy to be close to my friends and family and my sisters, which is great. It's weird, the last 2 weeks we spent in Sydney, like I fully intended, like I thought we were like, you know, like we were screwed. We had no money, I had no job. So I was like, well, what are we doing? Within those 2 weeks, I managed to land a KFC commercial, which was crazy. I got paid to spend 2 days eating copious amounts of chicken, like more chicken than humanly possible to consume. So that will be coming out hopefully in the next 2 weeks. I think it's going to be on TV, internet and stadium, so you might see me on a YouTube ad before a video, which would be super cool, but so let me know if you do. And a week later I auditioned for and got a role in a new ABC TV show. It's nothing crazy, it's just kind of like a 1 episode character, which is still really cool. So for the next month or so my videos will be coming less. I mean, I don't post much anyway, but less just because obviously all my books are currently in storage, so I've got nothing to read. Obviously all my subscription unboxings will be coming late because I had to redirect the mail, so they will be coming, but they'll be coming later. Obviously also because we have moved and have minimal money, I'm not going to be able to make it to the Sydney Godsgrave launch, unfortunately. I kind of had to choose between the Sydney or the Melbourne one. I decided to go to the Melbourne one because a lot of my bookish friends are in Melbourne, so I will still be attending the Melbourne Godsgrave launch in September. I will not be attending the Sydney Godsgrave launch, unfortunately, because I am bad with money. Book related, I read a total of 7.5 books this month, which is weird because I feel like I had a really busy month. And I read all of those books within like the first half of the month while I was still working, so props to me. So the first book I read this month was a book that I had started reading at the end of last month and then just finished within like the first few days. I definitely mentioned it in my last wrap up, but that was A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, which it really surprised me. I mean, I went in with no expectations just because it wasn't really my usual cup of tea. I didn't really know what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised. I really loved Monty, who was our protagonist. I found his humor and his banter really, really funny, and his the little romance that was there, which obviously I'm not going to get into too much because spoilers, but I really, really enjoyed it. The next book I read was Released by Patrick Ness, which again was a book that I didn't really have too many expectations going into, didn't really know too much about it. This one pretty much follows a day in the life of Adam Thorne, who's our protagonist, as he goes through some really shitty things, some really great things, and some really weird things. And there's also this fantastical, magical underlining element to it as well, which kind of hooks it all back and ties it all together. The next book I read was Blackwing by Ed McDonald, which is like this post-apocalyptic fantasy mashup. As much as I enjoyed Blackwing, I found I kind of struggled with the world building of it all. The way I thought it was before I actually looked into it was I thought this was maybe a spin-off of another series or within the same magical vein as previous series, but this is actually his debut novel, so there are no other books going off of it. The world building is quite large and the language is, I found, a little difficult to get into just because there was no glossary or kind of explaining, you know, Specifically, the antagonists are these things called the Deep Kings, and there's no real explanation of what they are. I mean, like, there is explanation, but it didn't really click with my brain, and I may have just glazed over it, but I still really enjoyed the book itself. I also got around to reading The Themis Files, which is Sleeping Giants and Waking Gods by Sylvia Nouvelle, which is this really cool, like, sci-fi, alternate fantasy sort of thing, which I thought was really groovy. Again, not my usual cup of tea, but I was pleasantly surprised. The cool thing about these books are obviously they're files, so they're set out in interview form, which I'm usually kind of hesitant about, but I found that these ones pulled it together really nicely. There were kind of no gaps or breaks that I was like, what's going on? Who are these people? It pretty much all starts with a young girl finding, I guess, a really fucking big hand, like a big metallic hand, and then kind of how that sends the world into a frenzy because there turns out to be more pieces, and it builds this whole body and like space and aliens that aren't really aliens, and it's a whole other thing. But I really enjoyed them. I finished them within like a day each because I was so just like, "Pwah," and they're easy reads. I also read Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody, which is a YA fantasy. There's a young girl who lives and works in this kind of freak show circus festival. She has the ability to create illusions, and all of a sudden her illusions start being murdered, which is like, how does that happen? Because they're not really real. And then her journey trying to figure out what's going on. I didn't really enjoy this book. It was literally just a book that I read. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, I didn't really relate to it. It was just kind of a book that I read. I didn't love the characters, I didn't really care too much for the plot line. There's not really too much I have to say about that one except for that. I also read Because You Love to Hate Me, 13 Tales of Villainy by Amory, which is basically a bunch of booktubers and a bunch of authors creating an anthology, which I thought was really cool. I'm always a huge fan of villains, so this was like 10 out of 10 for me. It was really good in terms of this one because because I read the whole thing. I obviously read work from authors that I haven't read their work before. It was cool seeing what other booktubers, I guess, what their prompts were, what their takes on it were, because they obviously also wrote a little bit as well. Obviously my favorite one was V.E. Schwab. Anything that woman writes is just 10 out of 10 magical. It's amazing. Speaking of which, she has just dropped the news that she'll be writing 4 new books in the Shades of Magic world, so I am so excited! The last book, audiobook, piece of literature that I consumed was just a re-listening to Red Rising on audiobook. Obviously the drive from Sydney to Brisbane is really fucking long, so I needed something to do. I was just really craving some more Red Rising because I'm super psyched for Iron Gold to come out. Apart from that, that's pretty much everything that's happened in August. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, my videos will be coming a little bit later and disjointed, especially my subscription boxes, just because I don't have any of them yet at my new place. Hopefully in the next few days I'll be able to make an introduction video to Trick when he gets here, and if he does well and settles in nicely, hopefully I'll be able to present my son next. Yeah, apart from that, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you're into that sort of stuff. If not, also cool. Don't worry about it. I mean, I'd prefer it if you did. Okay, bye.